Find a new way to live in Toronto's coveted Forest Hill neighborhood. Foray by Canderel blends thoughtful, livable suite design with refined finishes and more than 50,000 square feet of amenities, including wellness spaces, work-from-home areas, fitness facilities, and places to unwind. A modern, elevated community crafted for the life you've earned. Your next home starts from $599,000. Learn more at live@foray.ca. That's live at FORET.ca.
Hey everybody, I'm Jamie. I'm here with my co-host Gabe. We are the Menschwarmers. Thanks for joining us. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
You know, I had a wonderful Shavuos. How was yours?
You know, shockingly dairy-free, unfortunately.
Oh.
I feel like some years I think like I should make a cheesecake, and
Yeah.
like, you know, it doesn't take much to make me want to make a cheesecake. So having an excuse to do it is always welcome.
Receiving the Torah as one of those things that can make you want a cheesecake.
You know, my religious practice tends to be more dessert based than anything else. So,
you know, as a people, we're pretty good at finding dessert based holidays.
Yeah.
You know, between the Hamantash and the Sufganiyot and the cheesecake. Even
one that doesn't necessarily jibe with our general GI tracks as a people.
It's a very, very good point. I mean, it was a great Shavuos. I emceed a wedding on Shavuos, had a blast with that. Got, you know, brought our sort of Menschwarmers attitude to a non-Jewish wedding, but it was still a blast. And otherwise, you know, been following sports. You and I had a little personal news. We took a Menschwarmers field trip a couple of weekends ago.
That's right.
To the last weekend.
Or
yes,
no,
right.
Sorry, you're right.
Yeah, 10 days ago or so, to the fine American metropolis of Detroit. We took in a couple of Detroit Tigers games. I took a selfie with Hank Greenberg's jacket, which I guess we'll post on social media after this episode airs, that we can show, you know, as part of the trip.
Pretty cool, Comerica.
Pretty cool, Comerica Park. Very, very cool. And then
enjoyed it quite a bit.
You know, as a I think most 30-something men in 2026 would describe themselves somewhat as like urban planning enthusiasts.
Urbanist, you know, YIMBY urbanist is that's a going concern.
And as a YIMBY urbanist myself, finding a downtown stadium is like, you know, the walkability apex here. So it's got to.
I don't want to know what kind of public funds were involved in building the downtown stadiums in Detroit.
Not important.
They got to have been extensive.
I mean,
not important. Yeah.
As long as they're using them for something, you know, Detroit. I feel like the Detroit Renaissance has been talked about for a long time. Anyway, enough about Urbanism Corner. Enough of Urbanism Corner. We had a great time in Detroit. Saw the stadium. Had a very nice time at the Albert Kahn Jewish designed yet long time restricted Detroit Athletic Club.
Very nice. Our friend who we were with had a reciprocal membership. Good gigs if you can get it. You get to watch the game from there. And no one asked if we were Jewish, but you know, we would not have been allowed in, I guess, not that long ago.
Not that, I think so. It seems to have been unofficially unrestricted in the sort of 1990s time, but in 2015 they did have a recent lawsuit of someone claiming he was not allowed in because he was Jewish.
Wow.
You know, there's some research there. The argument was made that the guy who did it was sort of like a back of the bus personal injury lawyer, and they didn't want that kind of like personality in. If that is code word for Jew, maybe. One thing I thought was quite remarkable about that place, and I know a lot of people want to go in there. Friend of the pod, Mitch Albom. Mitch, if you've been to the Detroit Athletic Club, let us know. We'll talk about it. But I saw there was a large bust and biography of Henry Ford, who, as we know, big fan of cars, not a big fan of our people. And on the bus,
he did do some things later in his life to sort of, reconsider his views, I think, to a certain degree.
Oh, did he?
I don't know that he went to the grave hating Jews. Certainly he did a lot to support anti-Semitism in America in the earlier part of his life, but I don't know that he continued on with that forever.
So
Not defending Henry Ford here.
One way or another. On the Henry Ford bust, it describes him as an industrialist and not a racing champion, but a race champion, which I think is sort of an ironic wording for what he was.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, he, regardless of what we all think of, the town of Dearborn, Michigan today and its opinion on Jewish people, he was not a fan of Hank Greenberg. And not a fan, ran an anti-Semitic newspaper called the Dearborn Independent.
Yes.
But, as many people know, he did, was not a fan of Hank Greenberg. So we saw both sides of those.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Gabe, let's move on. It is the NBA conference finals right now. One is about to end as the Knicks, no Jews involved with the team right now, but
other than Ben
a ton
Stiller.
of Jewish support.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. A ton of Jewish supporters look to be trouncing the Cavs and seem to be completing the sweep. So shame for Cavs' Jewish owner, I guess. But nice for the Jewish Knicks fans and celebrity and otherwise, let's say. And the other conference final, which is a better one, at least tied 2-2 right now, between the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And this leads us to, I guess, a bit of a feature topic. Let's give some background here, which is to say,
we received a tip about a year ago that I would say we should look into the background of Chet Holmgren. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think we ever really thought much of it or did any more than cursory digging. I know he had obviously gone to Gonzaga. He went to Christian prep school as well. But after this and the photo and some other things, there was some
maybe somebody knows something. Maybe somebody knows
something. Yeah. In the previous offseason, Chet was working out of the gym in a Hebrew day school, I think, in LA. Again, a place where plenty of non-Jewish basketball players have gone to practice. But again, we hadn't really run it down much, but now we did. And here's the headline. Chet Holmgren's mom certainly is Jewish or grew up Jewish.
Absolutely.
I can't speak to anyone's current religious affiliation, identity, or anything like that. I know Chet sort of went to Christian schools, but again, that's not uncommon for people regardless of their beliefs. That's often where there's good basketball programs. Gonzaga obviously has had lots of Catholic and non-Catholic players throughout the years.
So,
but Chet's mom's name is Sarah Harris. Her parents are Ray and Alta Harris.
And the Harrises are a big Minneapolis developer family. We looked into this. And so there's a lot written about Ray Harris, Chet's grandfather, Sarah's father. And that leads us to an obituary we saw.
That's right. So Ray Harris unfortunately passed away about a year ago, and the services were held at a Temple Israel in Minneapolis. The same was true of Alta Harris as well. When she passed away, they are, in all the places, their names are in all the places you would imagine within the Minneapolis Jewish community, on the donor list of various Jewish organizations at different times. It's not the kind of thing where somebody who is, a well-known community person necessarily has it written down, he was Jewish, but it seems clear to us based on this research that Ray and Alta were Jewish.
Yes.
And again, halachically, all their children would be. We did find a blog from Dan Harris, who would be
Sarah's brother,
Chet's maternal uncle,
yes,
his mom's brother, and he refers to himself as Jewish and celebrating Hanukkah. And again, I don't think there's any denial on anyone's part.
No,
we should say, and this is just, again, we don't do a ton of journalism, quote unquote journalism here. Our producer reached out to the Oklahoma City Thunder about this, didn't get a response in any sort of timely manner. I don't know if it's something that Chet wants to talk about or not. And he's well within his rights to say, I'm a private person. My religious affiliation, my background is all private, and I don't want to talk about it at all. I don't agree with it necessarily, but I think he's entitled to do that.
He's also welcome to come on this show and discuss it. And we can officially say, despite what happens on Google, Chet Holmgren has a fully Jewish mother. Chet is ethnically Jewish. I think
that's right.
We can, commit and say that. Does this immediately make him the greatest Jewish basketball player of all time? Now that he's on second?
I don't know. I mean, I'm hesitant to call him Jewish just because, I think that is in part a personal decision for someone to make. Like, I think it's not, it's like when the Mormons baptize people who died hundreds of years ago. I don't think that's particularly savory. And I think the Jewish community saying, no, this guy is Jewish. He's Jewish. His mother was Jewish, therefore he's Jewish. You can't not, a Jew is Jew is Jew.
No,
I think someone's entitled to have their opinion. And he says, again, he may well be the case. He says, I didn't observe that at all. Yes, I knew my grandparents had that as part of their lives, but that was not something I was ever exposed to or took part in, and I don't consider myself Jewish. I'm not going to stand on a soapbox and say he has to consider himself Jewish.
No.
Like there's been other people of some Jewish extraction, whether half Jewish or otherwise, who have, become evangelical Christians. Paul Goldschmidt's half Jewish. We don't really talk about him as being Jewish very often. Corey Pavin, I think, fully converted.
He fully converted away.
I think grew up fully Jewish, but fully converted. Matt Wolf, another golfer, fully converted.
But they'd all still be eligible. They'd all still be eligible for whatever Israeli national team in which they choose to play.
Look, this is a very difficult question that's been answered many different ways over the years, and I know different people have different opinions about it. I'm just saying, for our purposes, I think we've given the full label to people that we're not saying, Corey Pavin, Jewish major winner or something like that. We say Corey Pavin grew up Jewish, doesn't identify, obviously converted, and he's entitled to, convert away if that's what he so chooses, obviously. And we're not going to, hold him up as a paragon of Jewish athlete. Chet Holmgren entitled to do the same thing. And obviously I would say he hasn't made any sort of public comment about any of these things.
Other
people
than,
making jokes online, calling him Chet Netanyahu. He's certainly been capable of making a comment about it if he wants to. And he may well in the future, but for now he hasn't. So this is all, to say, if you want to vote for Chet Holmgren because of this, feel free. He is halachically Jewish. He's Jewish by background, and maybe someday he will comment on it or reach out about it or anything like that.
I will say two interesting things about his grandfather, Ray Harris. His obituary referred to him as being called Big Daddy. As he was a developer in Minneapolis. He died at almost 100. He called himself always unemployed, even though he created innovative residential products and thriving retail centers. He also wrote and illustrated 2 different autobiographies about himself. And his obituary says that he was a cowboy, a wrestler, a beach bum, an army vet, sat in the electric chair, and even walked on water. Unabashedly humble as well. And then finally that he was predeceased by Adam and Eve. So he's got a biblical sense to him, but was absolutely, a proud Jewish man. And, his grandson Chet is mentioned in his very Jewish obituary with the celebration of life, Temple Israel. I think it's probably, given that the celebration of life was done during the off season last year, and in Minneapolis and in July, and Chet is named in the obituary, it is reasonable to assume that Chet probably went to Temple Israel for such a thing. He's probably been to Temple Israel where his family was very involved. There's lots of shul bulletins with the Harris family. We also have researched this. There's, the yurt site of various grandparents of the Harris family is represented at Temple Israel many times. So it's likely that he was involved there at least somewhat in his life, has been there before, even if he may not be so observant now.
And look, I guess the most charitable way to talk about this is to simply say, this is a time at a minimum of growing anti-Semitism and not wanting to have any sort of target on your back is understandable, especially for people who are in the public spotlight and,
he's about
to be yelled at all the time.
Who knows what's going to happen? So, he might be going into his second straight NBA finals.
Absolutely. So I can understand it. Like, again, I can understand it. I think it will, I think it's also, I would also say it's a brave thing to publicly embrace your Judaism right now and to talk about it. And I think that, whether or not that's what someone chooses, both are understandable.
Yep.
Both are understandable, but I don't know. I've certainly, when there have been people like, like the Klitschko brothers, like I think are quarter Jewish, but it's something they've talked about publicly and talked about their connection with the state of Israel and their Jewish grandparent. I think it's their dad's mom, so I don't think it's their halachically
Jewish.
It's something they've talked about. David Beckham has talked about his Jewish grandfather, and like again, like it's a it's a source of pride. I think that that's the way lots of people have approached their ancestral connection to Judaism, and I hope continue to.
Mhm.
But I can also understand not wanting that to come with a target on your back and not coming with criticism for things that have nothing to do with the thing that you do that you're famous for.
Yep.
Nothing to do with the sport that you play.
And especially in
so
a place
again,
like Oklahoma City, where I don't know how many Jews there are there. I know Minneapolis
Sure.
is a thriving and proud Jewish community, but maybe Oklahoma City is not a great place to be a Jew right now. I'm not going to say
I don't
it
know.
is or it isn't. But it's
Yeah.
certainly interesting to see that there's someone who, I don't want to say it, and maybe that's a little bit on us, but someone who has been in the spotlight in the NBA for such a long time, to have this sort of, there's always research that slips our minds or slips our purview.
I hope I'm hoping noted Jewish Oklahoma City Thunder fan Tim Blake Nelson can get to the bottom of this and find out some info about Chet.
Yes, that's
the goal.
Is anybody in the Flaming Lips Jewish? I don't think so. They look kind of Jewish, but I don't think any. I don't think Wayne Coyne is Jewish, and he's the only other Oklahoma City person I can think of.
Well, Goldberg is from Oklahoma, isn't he?
That's right.
I think he's from Tulsa too, like Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah.
So maybe there's more Jews in Tulsa than Oklahoma City. I've never been to that part of the world. Hell if I know what the connection is between those two places, and if there's one could be a suburb of the other for all I know. I don't think that's the case, but if there's Jews in Oklahoma City, I'm sure there are some.
Yep.
And supporting the team. So, anyways, let's move on. Obviously, this is something we'll hopefully hear something about in the future, and it's something you continue to monitor. But it's an interesting thing to find out. A little bit of reportage from the Menschwarmers. Moving on, I wanted to talk about the World Cup, which is coming up and coming to a town near you if you live in Toronto or Vancouver or New York or any of those other American cities. And there is,
we think there is a single Jew.
We got one. Yeah, we got a single Jew in the World Cup. Gabe, who's that?
So it is likely second string American goaltender Matt Turner. This is going to be his second World Cup. He played already last time. He is currently the goalie for the New England Revolution, who is sort of a mid-tier playoff team. He is going to be just behind New York's goalie Matt Freese, who, with a name like Matt Freese in New York, could be Jewish, isn't quite Christian, although he did go to Harvard. But Matt Turner will be the Jewish player, in 2026. There may be sort of in a David Beckham style, maybe there's a British player we're not recognizing with a Jewish grandparent. There is a man on the British team named Jude, but that does not quite count as Jewish. That would be Jude Bellingham. But we think so far, based on all of the teams in the Middle East, I guess the Canadian team is being released tomorrow. We can tell you now that Jacob Schaffelberg is not Jewish. We've been asked about him before. Right. And he plays for Team Canada or will be on Team Canada, barring some shock. It is likely Matt Turner will be the only one.
Yeah, DeAndre Yedlin had been on the American team in the previous World Cup, but I think he's not on this World Cup roster.
Yes, I do not believe so.
USMNT. And I think I'm not a huge soccer watcher, but it seems like the USMNT is not looking necessarily that great. Obviously, there were times in the 2000s, late 90s, stuff like that, where they look like they could compete, but team's sort of in shambles right now. 60-1 to win the tournament, but playing all their games at home.
Yeah, that's true.
Count for something.
What's the Canadian odds?
Probably.
I'm sure it's worse than 60. Although Canada, I think, has a slightly easier group. So apparently, there is a Curaçaoan player who is in the World Cup. I'm seeing this now. It's their first World Cup ever. We missed this. There is a former Curaçaoan defender who is not playing but is currently a executive named Morty Maduro, who is a former Jewish player who is from Curaçao but is not actually, was a Dutch Jew who moved there but is not at all involved in the team anymore. In fact, he's dead. But we'll take it.
If anyone knows of any other Jewish players or anything like that on anyone's World Cup roster, let us know. Always happy to know about that. Of course, we expect Andres Cantor to be calling the game for Telemundo, and I think a fair amount of the Spanish speaking world. His famous goal.
Goal! I'd love to have
call.
Andres Cantor on this podcast. However, it's kind of unlikely. Maybe he could speak one word.
I don't know what his English was like. But it's his busy season coming up. So World Cup is exciting. I would say it's easier for Jews to go to the World Cup this time.
As it's not in Qatar.
I mean, Israelis were allowed in Qatar the last World Cup. I don't know if they would be going this time in 26. But anyways, it's in the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. So I'm sure there'll be more Jewish fans there.
We're 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away from the first game, the first Canadian game, Canada versus Bosnia and Herzegovina, of which there are definitely Jewish Canadians who have family from that region. There's a little bit of story there.
Sure. Exciting to see. I think there's Jews all around the world cheering for the national teams, and cheer for Matt Turner too. Hopefully he gets into some games. I guess we'll see. He's been he's been in the Premier League. I don't think he's been like a primary starter at any time.
He played for Nottingham, I think, for a long time.
Which I think is why he's been loaned back to the Revolution.
A lot of North American players have come back to play in the MLS, just sort of for promotions for the World Cup this season. There's a bunch of Canadians and Americans who have come back to the MLS from other places for that exact reason.
Exactly. Before we go, just want to do a little, I think third of the season check-in on baseball. Obviously the best Jewish player I think in the game right now, unequivocally, is Max Fried.
Mm-hmm.
Max has been having a pretty solid season going into a few weeks ago when he unfortunately injured himself. It seems like he hurt his elbow, but
he played
he is
catch
starting
today.
to rehab.
I always think it's very funny when they
getting
talk
back
about
from a baseball injury is like it's like what an 8-year-old boy would do. Like he played catch,
run the bases.
He ran the bases.
Is that what you?
Someone runs the bases, hitting off a tee.
Yeah.
Those are all the steps. So
those are all. Yeah, it's what my child does at t-ball. It's very true.
Right. I would wonder. I would bet he probably hasn't taken BP in a while. We should say, we've talked about this when it happened. Max Fried is the reigning and last Silver Slugger pitcher. He won it the last year before there was a DH. So he will always be the reigning. I mean, unless they get rid of the DH or start handing out Silver Sluggers for pitchers again for some reason. He is the reigning Silver Slugger. So unfortunately, he doesn't get to hit anymore. But you never know if the Yankees decide to start. I don't know.
Maybe
they got really
they could
deep
pinch
into
hit him
in
the 18th inning of something. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But he should be back soon. Is the point?
He should be back soon. Alex Bregman is off to a pretty good first quarter of the season as well. With his new team in Chicago. He's been playing.
And Spencer Horwitz also off to a good start in Pittsburgh. We saw him in Toronto the other day. He hit a home run to open the game. I think it was the first pitch, just zoomed it out to right field.
Mm-hmm.
Interviewed after the game, talked about his connection with Toronto and his old buddies that he came up with, like Aaron Clement and David Schneider. But nice to see them. They'll be battling it out in the NL Central all year. It looks like it's going to be a tough. Honestly, all 5 teams are pretty solid right now. So
absolutely,
between the Cubs and the Pirates, could see 2 of those in the playoffs.
And
Jock Peterson's getting into a fair amount of games for Texas, who are fading a little bit right now, but also look to be in the conversation in a very competitive AL West right now.
Absolutely, it's been a weird start to the season, no question. An extremely weird start to the season. However, we do see, how it's been interesting to see the wheat from the chaff hasn't really been separated yet. Your classics, your Yankees and your Dodgers are doing fine, but beyond that, it's really competitive everywhere in the league. And we get to see a lot of guys, perform really well. Another guy that's come up this year that sort of had a bad year last year and is back is Zach Geloff, who's back in the majors and off to a decent start. Hitting for a good amount of pop, but not a ton of on base. But he is hitting the ball quite hard. So it's good to see. He's already got a half a win in a third of a season. So that would be a legitimate, league average player. And we're happy to see it.
Yeah. Dean Kramer did, we talked about earlier this year that he started in AAA despite, a few years on the Orioles starting rotation. He did come up and pitch 2 games, but then was put on the IL, where he's been for, I think, more or less the last month. So this is not looking like a good year for the Orioles. Might end up being a write-off year for Dean. I don't, I think there's always studies on this, but it never seems definitive on like whether the participation in the WBC
matters,
guys or not.
Guys.
If guys are overthrowing or anything like that, I don't know. Obviously both but Kramer was on Team Israel. But I don't know that they'll led to any injury or anything like that. Be interesting to see what they can do for LA. I mean, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt recently about, maybe doing some sort of but they are doing some sort of Olympic baseball in LA, for sure. But whether that can include MLB players, and how long it can be and things like that, I think they're still working out whether that replaces the WBC or not, which would be coming up, I guess, in 2029. I don't know. Remains to be seen. So that would be interesting to see. Gabe, before we go, anything else, Jews and sports, you want to talk about? Max Grazerman had a pretty decent PGA Championship, we should say.
Yep.
Went into the weekend, I think, in third place. Faded a little bit, but solid showing for him.
Absolutely. We talk about auto racing every now and again. The Indy 500 was last weekend. Former pole sitter Robert Schwartzman was not in the race. But Jewish athlete Jewish racer Nolan Siegel, I believe, came in 11th in a 35-man field, so not so bad. And he's young; he's going to get other chances at it.
Decent showing at the Brickyard.
Yeah, decent showing at the Brickyard.
That's what they call the Indy 500.
That's right, the Brickyard.
I recently learned.
It's only his second Indy 500.
Okay.
And yeah, so he's in 2026 he finished 11th, which is a pretty good outcome, especially for your second one. McLaren's got a good car this year. He's having a good season. Hopefully he'll keep getting even better.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's leave it there for now. If anyone has insight into Chet Holmgren, please reach out. Let us know. It'd be interesting to see this.
See where this goes.
See where this goes. If this gets reported by anybody else. As always, we are brought to you by the Canadian Jewish News. You can find our podcast, articles, everything else at the Canadian Jewish News website, the CJN.ca. We are executive produced by Michael Freeman. And find us on Twitter at Menschwarmers for ongoing tweets about interesting op-eds, comparing teams to Israel,
and pictures of me with Hank Greenberg's jacket.
Things of that nature. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get it.